I want to begin by saying thank you to Colonial Baptist Church, to Shepherd's Theological Seminary, to Stephen Davey, to Dave Burgraff, to Les Lofquist, to the very gifted staff of the church and of the seminary, to the army of volunteers made this conference possible. I got up this morning and it just occurred to me. It took vision in this year to have this conference. It has been a difficult, strange year here in America. We're not nearly to the end of this year yet. And I want to say thank you to the leadership here. You had the vision to hold this conference. You could have canceled, but you didn't. You could have made it completely online, but you didn't. We needed this. I leave here in a little while saying, I didn't realize how much I needed this. We've all been cooped up. We just, in a lot of ways, had it about as much of this as we can take. And we're not to the end of it yet. And we don't know when we're going to get there. So, Dave, thank you. And to Pastor Stephen Davey and to the whole team here, we love you guys. You're just amazing that in this pandemic year, you let us come here and be a part of this. So my text this morning is only one verse. John 3, verse 30. I've been thinking about it, and thinking about it, and thinking about it. They say when a man turns 60, he becomes a philosopher of life. I am now 8 years into the philosophy portion of my earthly journey. And it's interesting to me that when this year started, way before the pandemic, way before COVID and all the rest of it, this verse was ringing in my mind. I've not been able to get beyond it very well. Still thinking about it. So I think with you about it this morning. A familiar verse. John the Baptist said in John 3:30, he must increase, speaking of Jesus, but I must decrease. Sometimes it helps take a new look at an old verse. Now I ask myself, right here at the beginning, what in the world did John mean when he said, he must increase, but I must decrease? Would have been a different thing in some ways if he had said, he can increase and I can decrease, or he will increase and I will decrease. That's not what he said. He must. So I looked it up. Looked up that little word in the Greek. It means it is necessary. It's the very same word that Jesus himself used in Matthew 16:21 when he said, Jesus said that he must go to Jerusalem. He must be killed. Jesus must die. Same word. Jesus must increase. John the Baptist must decrease. So having settled that in my mind, I pondered over this some more. What did he mean when he said, Jesus must increase? Exactly what kind of increase could happen to the Son of God? Because he always was, and he is, and he always will be the eternal, absolute, sovereign Son of God. Go as far as you want. Go beyond the Milky Way. Go past the galaxies. Go to the end of the universe, wherever that is. And there you will find the sovereign, undiminished, unchanged and unchanging Son of God. Take your microscope and go down to the smallest. Go past the subatomic. Go down to whatever that tiniest little bit of matter is. When you have gone down beyond that, there he stands, the sovereign, almighty Son of God. So whatever it means, he must increase. It cannot mean that he is going to increase in his innate greatness. God cannot become greater than himself. But his greatness is not always seen on the earth. It is not always appreciated. It's not always applauded. We've already been reminded in this conference, the foundations are being destroyed all around us. Dr. Moeller, last night in that very, very, very powerful address, he said we're now living in an age where it is, at least among the intelligentsia, it's impossible to believe. There have always been doubters, but there are more now than ever. There have always been those who deny, but there are more now than ever. Those who attack, they are with us. Those who ignore, they are with us. The Bible says he came into his own, and his own received him not. He came to his own people, and they rejected him. He came to the world he had made, and that world crucified him. He came to his own family, and his family did not believe in him. His greatness innately cannot increase, but the recognition of his greatness must increase every single day. Jesus must increase in his fame and in his influence. He must increase as more and more men and women from every nation follow him. That is at least part of what John the Baptist meant when he said, he must increase. And so, in the moments given to me, let me just organize my remarks this way: the man, the message, and the meaning. First, the man. So, all of you preachers out there, here's a good series of sermons for you. Go home and do a series of sermons on John the Baptist. I have been working on this for several years, and I can't get to the end of it. I'm just kind of throwing this out there as a friend of preachers. Preach on John the Baptist. You'll find the field wide open. On Peter, there are plenty of books. On Paul, there are plenty of books. On the apostles, there are plenty of books. But you go looking for books about John the Baptist. Well, I think maybe the two best that have been written in the English language were written a century ago. One by the great British Bible teacher F.B. Meyer. And I think the greatest book on John the Baptist so far in English was written by A.T. Robertson of Southern Seminary in Louisville in 1911. Dr. Robertson wrote a book about John the Baptist, and he called it John the Loyal. So I began working on this sermon series, and like a lot of preachers, I've just dillied and dallied around about it and haven't jumped into the deep end of the pool. But I started writing all the verses about John the Baptist in the New Testament down, and I got to 17 pages. I couldn't believe how much there was there. And when A.T. Robertson wrote about John the Loyal, I think as much as any other book I've read, I think what I'm going to say this morning owes as much to that book as to anything else. So when we look at John the Baptist, what do we see? We see a man, watch this. He wasn't there. And then he's there. And then he's gone. That's his whole story. He's not there. And then he's there. And then he's gone. Just like that. This bright comet streaking through the night, there for a little while, a few weeks, a few months, a year or so, there he is, and vast crowds come to hear him at the Jordan River. John the Baptist was God's man for that hour of history, and there, down by the Jordan River, wearing all the strange raiment, the burlap, and eating the wild honey and the locust. He excoriated the Pharisees. He called for the nation to repent. There was A.T. Robertson who helped me see what happened then as his fame spread. A band of men, his disciples, began to follow him. And John the Baptist went from place to place, and there was his band of followers. And at one point, the Gospels even say all Israel came to hear him at the Jordan River. Upon a day, guess who shows up? Jesus of Nazareth. Starting his ministry, Jesus shows up. And John says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Jesus came to John to be baptized. And we know what John thought about that. I'm not worthy to untie your shoelaces. And Jesus says, do it. Do it. Allow this to be done for the fulfillment of all righteousness. And when John baptized Jesus, the voice of the Father from heaven and the dove came down, the triune God in one place in the New Testament. And there, now watch this. Jesus begins his public ministry. Here's John, here's Jesus. Here's John, here's Jesus. John has his men. Jesus has his. And there for a while, there for just a little while, around the region of the Jordan River, there's John and there's Jesus, two competing movements that cannot last. We read about what happened in John 3, verses 25 and 26. Then a dispute arose between John's disciples and the Jew. We don't even know who this is. A Jew, that's all we know. A dispute arose about purification, the washings and so on. So they, the disciples of John the Baptist, came and told him, Rabbi, the one you testified about, who was with you across the Jordan, that's Jesus, you understand. Rabbi, you remember Jesus. You baptized him. He now is baptizing. And everyone is going to him. And all God's people said, ouch. At moments like these, you find out the truth about yourself. It's a grand thing to be the leading pastor in your village, in your town, in your city, in your county, in your state, in your conference, in your denomination. When you are the leading pastor, they come and interview you. When you are the leading pastor, they come and ask you for church growth tips. When you are the leading pastor, you get invited to speak at the Jerusalem Founders Conference. You get the book deals. You get the talk shows. The presidential candidates show up at your service because they want your endorsement. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it's easy for fame to go to your head. I recall the words of Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, who said, success is a lousy teacher. It makes smart people think they can do no wrong. We all know, don't we? Success ruins far more people than failure. I mean, look, it's easy to understand how this happened. John had been there first. John started his ministry. He owned the field. He was the only one in the category. For a few months, he had been the man, preaching and baptizing and calling the nation to repentance. And suddenly, here comes Jesus. And now, everyone is going to him. You see, when you fail, you ask a lot of hard questions. Nobody asks hard questions when you're succeeding. You're too busy counting likes on your Facebook page. So, question. What was John's attitude when his men came to him and said, boss, we got a problem. This other fellow you baptized, we're losing people. They're going from us to him. What are we going to do? Okay, run the clock back to the time when before Jesus has shown up to be baptized. John's still the only game in town. Okay, we know exactly what John thought because it's recorded for us in the Gospel of John. In John chapter 1, see the boys at headquarters. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Herodians, the scribes, the chief priests, the boys at the headquarters in Jerusalem. They like to run a tight ship, like to keep everything buttoned up. And they'd heard about this crazy man down by the Jordan River, and you just couldn't have that. You just can't have some wild man down there by the Jordan River carrying on and pointing fingers and excoriating people and baptizing people. That just causes an uproar. So in John 1, listen to what happens. John 1, verse 19. This was John's testimony when the Jews from Jerusalem, see, that's what I'm talking about. They've come from headquarters. They sent priests and Levites, of course. They want to know, who are you? I mean, that's a good question. Who are we? Don't know. We don't know you. You didn't come up through our schools. We don't have your resume on file. We don't know who you are. Who are you? Verse 20, he didn't deny it, but confessed, I am not the Messiah. Who are you then? Are you Elijah? I am not. Are you the prophet? No. Who are you then? That's a good question. And I love this. It actually makes me laugh when I read it. We need to give an answer to those who sent us, the big boys in Jerusalem. What do you want us to tell them? What can you tell us about yourself? And he said, I'm the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, just as Isaiah said. Are you the Messiah? No. Elijah? No. Prophet? No. Fine. Who are you? A voice. A voice. John the Baptist, a voice. Now, how could he say that? Well, in 21st century terms, he had a good self-image. He knows who he is, and he knows who he isn't. Got to get that last part. It's not enough to know who you are. You got to make sure you know who you're not. If you know who you are, you don't have to pretend. The wise man said, be yourself. Everybody else is taken. So, John, who are you? He's a voice for God. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. God raised up this man for this ministry at this moment in history, and John is completely content with God's call. That's the man. Now the message. Now the message. Clearly, John knows his days are numbered. Question, does John know he's going to end up with his head on a platter? No, he doesn't know that. That has not been revealed. Does John know that he doesn't have very long to live? No, he doesn't know that because that hasn't been revealed either. Soon enough, Herod, that fox, is going to have John thrown into jail in that dismal, dank, dirty dungeon on the east side of the Jordan River there, out in the wilderness, Machaerus. And there John is going to he's just going to be there. Day after day and week after week and month after month. But that day, John has no inkling of what's about to happen. But this is what John knows. John knows clearly, watch this, that the rising of Jesus means his public ministry must soon end. Did he sense the coming doubts? Because you know, he did go through that period. A.T. Robertson again has a whole chapter on it called his gloom. That's a good word. John's gloom in that dungeon over there, east side of the Jordan River. Prison time is hard time. We know that from watching Shawshank Redemption, okay? It's my movie reference. Look, if it's true that John doubted, if it's true that John questioned, if it's true that John was unsure about things, he's not alone. Many a man has doubted in the darkness what he believed in the light. Well, what then? On this day, what then did John know? He knew his ministry, the public part, was coming to an end. Look, what was John the Baptist? He's a forerunner. A forerunner. What's a forerunner? He goes before the king. So he gets the king's itinerary. Monday he's here. Tuesday he's here. Wednesday he's there. So the forerunner goes out a few days, a week, 2 weeks ahead of time, and he goes from one city to another. And he tells them, you folks better shape up. Clean up this garbage. The king is coming through. And wash your face and do something with your hair and put out some flowers and let's get this thing ship shape because the king is coming through soon. That's what the forerunner does. Very important. It's an essential task, but only for a while. Watch this. The job of the forerunner comes with an expiration date. But here's the deal. The forerunner doesn't know in advance. He doesn't know in advance. And all of a sudden, it's totally clear now to John the Baptist. Very soon, he must exit stage right. That's not easy for any of us. Life has its seasons. We're born, we crawl, we walk, we speak, we make a few friends, we play games, we go to school, we become teenagers, we go to college maybe, we get a job, we fall in love, we get married, we have kids, the kids grow up, they move out, we get a job, we move, we get another job, we move again, we make a few friends, we make a few enemies, we save money, we invest, we travel, we move some more, friends enter, friends exit, we grow old, we retire, we move to Florida, we fish, we golf. One day, we stretch out on the recliner to take a nap, and we just don't wake up. We were told, Jared Wilson told us that yesterday, and he's right. On a long enough timeline, the life expectancy for everyone ends up at 0. COVID gets you, cancer, heart attack, stroke, a stray bullet, a car accident, or maybe you're just there, and then you're down, and then you're gone. You are gone. That's life for all of us. John the Baptist understood something that often causes us to struggle. He saw clearly that the major season of his life was ending. He saw it. He accepted it. He didn't fight against it. Look, every job has an expiration date. Friends come and go. Dreams don't last forever. And I still remember the shock when a wise friend said to me, pastors have a shelf life. You know what? I studied Greek and Hebrew in seminary. They forgot to cover that part of it. About the shelf life part. What did this mean for John? Gone were the heady days when all Israel came out to him. Gone were the scathing sermons that exposed the Pharisees. Gone were those fantastic moments when they baptized multitudes in the Jordan River. Question, if you're losing all of that, how in the world could John decrease so cheerfully? Well, guess what? He gives us the answer right in this passage in the preceding verses before verse 30. Number one, he knew that everything he received came from God. That's verse 27. Number two, he knew he was the best man, but Jesus was the bridegroom. Verses 28 and 29. If you know the source of your power, if you know who you are, you don't complain when you must decrease. It's not just that this was okay with John. He wanted Jesus to increase, even though it meant he must decrease. That's amazing. John, you see, was the morning star who faded away when the Son of God began to rise like sunlight in the morning. Question, did John fail? No. He succeeded in every way. So it is. All of us, everybody here, including me, definitely including me, we are all going to rise and fall during the course of a lifetime. God only requires that we be faithful like John was faithful. So if you want to know the real message of my sermon, And I like to tell people so they'll know when we hit it. We're hitting it right here. I'll tell you what it is, okay, so you'll know. Better to be forgotten because we did God's will than to be remembered because we didn't. Better to be forgotten because we did God's will than to be remembered because we didn't, which sounds a whole lot like what Count Zinzendorf, founder of the great Moravian missionary movement, used to say to the young men they sent out as preachers. Here was their job description. Zinzendorf said, preach the gospel, die, be forgotten. Whew. We all struggle to let go at times. No one likes to hear, we don't need you anymore, because we all want to feel indispensable. And maybe there were moments when it wasn't easy for John the Baptist, because we all grasp at things. So I was out riding my bike, and I saw a church sign. It was one of these fancy with the bright lights and everything, the old-fashioned kind where you got to take the pole and put the plastic letters up there, one of those kind of church signs. And it was a question I'd never thought about. Are we too fond of our own will? First of all, that's an unusual thing to put on a church sign anyway. I'd never really thought about that before. Are we too fond of our own will? And the answer is yes. We like liking what we like. So as I stand before you this morning, I got all kind of stuff on my mind. I mean, I got friends with COVID, and I got any number of friends with cancer, and people doing heavy treatment, and people with friends and marriage issues and kids and grandkids and career things and church things. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of people I know and love and concerns for them and for my family members. Plus I've got my own list of things I'm concerned about for myself, my dreams, my hopes, my goals, my ambitions, and all that. And when I pray God will be kind and will grant those things. So, yes, to answer the question on the church sign, I'm quite fond of my own will. But Jesus taught us to pray, thy will be done. You see, only one will can be done at a time. Either God calls the shots or you do. Either he's in control or you're in control. It's not easy to pray like that because it means giving up control of your own life. But you know. As we all want to feel indispensable, but as Charles de Gaulle, a man who would know, pointed out, the graveyards are filled with indispensable men. We're not as important or as necessary as we think we are. We're going to die. They're going to say some nice words. They're going to put us in the ground. Then they're going to go over to our house and eat our food and watch TV and tell stories. That's right. That's right. They're going to go to our house and eat our food and tell jokes. That's what you got to look forward to, okay? Look, so many of us go through life with the clenched fist, and we grab onto things, our family and our wife, our husband, our kids, our grandkids. We certainly grab onto our ministry, our church, our friends, our networks, our books, our social media, our reputation, our name in the lights, all the stuff that gives us so much satisfaction, that proves we didn't just sit on the couch watching The Simpsons, that we actually did something. I mean, we just grab onto it and we don't want to let go. And the whole course of spiritual growth is God beginning to remove our fingers from the things we value so greatly. And you know what? When he gets down to the thumb, that's when we start fighting back. But as the wise man said, your arms are too short to box with God. You are never going to win that. And you know what? Whenever he's ready, he's going to just pull the thumb back. He's going to take back all of it because it all belongs to him anyway. So if I have any advice for you this morning, it's very simple. Hold lightly what you value greatly. It doesn't belong to you anyway. What are you struggling with? I don't know. I know what I struggle with. You got to you got to open your hand. You got to open your clenched fist. No one had to tell John to go. He knew the time had come. Last thing, the meaning of all of this. Look, if you live long enough, you will both increase and decrease. So I read one of those articles about famous actors from the 1980s. You know, the actors and the actresses who made the big money, and they were Hollywood superstars, and it was one of those, where are they now? And you know, out of that long list of actors and actresses from the 1980s who were superstars, there's a tiny handful of them, just a tiny few who are still important today. The rest of them might as well be working at the car wash. Just the way life goes. So Doris Day died last year. I hadn't thought about her in a while, but after she died, I looked up Wikipedia, the source of all truth. It said she came into her fame in 1939, big band singer. Between 1947 and 67, she recorded 650 songs, pretty amazing. Made some movies with Rock Hudson in the late 50s and early 60s. She recorded Que Sera Sera, a song which, by the way, holds up very well today. They called her back then America's sweetheart. But her Wikipedia entry notes that her years of commercial activity ended in 1989, 30 years before her death, at age 97. If we live long enough, we will all end up the same way. Life has its seasons, and it's a measure of spiritual maturity to understand the seasons and to accept them from the hand of the Lord. And that, my friends, is the real meaning of John 3:30. Jesus increasing necessarily meant John decreasing. What I'm saying is, John the Baptist worked himself out of a job. No worries, no fear, no doubt, no need to hold on, because both the increase and the decrease came from the Lord. Do you know what the real problem is? The real problem is we live in a what have you done for me lately kind of world. We all get measured and weighed in the balances of life. Only the best among us can respond like John the Baptist. He embraced his decrease because of his bedrock faith in the sovereignty of God over the details of life. He knew he had been raised up for such a time as this. And when his time was over, it was okay with him to slip out of the limelight. So, come to the end of the story now. What a shocking end. I mean, your head's on a platter. I know. Your head's on a platter. But remember this. After they beheaded him, they buried him. Herod couldn't get him out of his mind. He was such a good man, such a strong man, such a powerful man, that when Jesus finally became well known enough to come to Herod's attention, who did Herod think he was? John the Baptist come back from the dead. God used John's death to convict Herod. In other words, John continued to prepare the way for the Lord, even in his death. What a great man. What a magnificent life. What a model for us to follow. Here then is the watchword for every pastor. He must increase, but I must decrease. Here's God's message to every missionary. He must increase, but I must decrease. Here's the blueprint for every Christian leader. He must increase, but I must decrease. John 3:30 is John the Baptist's final public statement. Everything else he says comes from his prison time. These are his last public words. And I just got to say, what an amazing way to wrap up your public ministry. No wonder Jesus said, among all those born of women, there's never been anybody greater than John the Baptist. So, listen, if this morning you are increasing, and some of us are, give thanks. Use your increase for the kingdom. Don't take credit Don't take any credit. Give God the glory. And remember, your increase will not last forever. Don't feel ashamed, but don't take it for granted. And if this morning you are decreasing, and some of us are, give thanks for what God has done. And remember, the seasons of life come and go. Let God use you in your weakness, in your fear, in your doubt, and in your uncertainty. You are not less of a Christian because life is hard right now. When we come to the bottom line, we find that the message of John 3:30 is the same for all of us, whether we are increasing or decreasing. If we believe in Jesus, then our whole goal must be to make him first in all things. So then, brothers and sisters, seasons come and go, but Jesus is Lord now and forever. Hold on to that truth in the months to come. If Christ is magnified in us this year, we will not have lived in vain.